For this Deep Rock Galactic Beginner's Guide, I'm going to go over some of the basics. First, how to get into a game, what you do. Then I'm going to cover some tips, tricks, and best practices once you actually start playing. Overall, this game is pretty forgiving at the start, but gets quite punishing later. Also keep in mind that there is meta progression. This is a roguelite, not a roguelike, so you're definitely going to have to grind a little bit, and potentially quite a lot depending on how things go, if you want all the stuff. First up, you need to choose your biome. You'll begin in the Crystalline Caverns. This is the only biome you can start in, because these little progress symbols actually unlock a lot of stuff. And you get this by completing challenges within the zone. So you'll start at Hazard 1, and you'll complete the dive, or upgrade your deep core gun, or collect 200 gold. Then you unlock Hazard 2, 3, 4, and finally the very difficult Hazard 5, where if you manage to complete the dive, congratulations, you definitely don't need this guide. But if you want to know more about which dwarves to pick or which guns to use, I might be making a tier list or a short guide on that. Do be sure to get subscribed, leave a like while you're down there. Also, I'm not 100% sure. I might wait for the full release of the game. We'll see. Yeah, so you choose the difficulty, you choose the biome. Over time, you'll get used to each of these. They have kind of their own hazards, which you can see here. The literal magma in the magma core, or these weird vines that are very annoying. And then you select your hazard level, which starts at Hazard 1. Then you select your dwarf. You will start with a scout. The scout is the most balanced character. And the Deep Core GK2 is a great starting weapon. It's a medium assault rifle that shoots forward, shoots to the side, shoots behind you, shoots bugs wherever they are. It targets the closest enemy, which is really, really good, and brings up an important point about guns in Deep Rock Galactic. They have targeting. So the Deep Core targets the closest enemy. On the other hand, the Zhukov NUK-17, I think that's how you say that, it fires in 4 directions. The M1000 Classic targets the highest health enemy. As you play, much like how you'll unlock other biomes, you'll also unlock other dwarves, like say the Gunner. We have a weapons specialist, starts with the Leadstorm powered minigun. This only shoots in the direction you're facing, which means it's a lot harder to aim, but it'll absolutely shred anything in front of you. So in short, Scout, really easy to play, really beginner friendly, and has 2 very, very powerful specializations, the Classic and the Sharpshooter. The Gunner is by far the hardest to play. I think the Weapon Specialist is quite hard because it's a forward-firing gun. Juggernaut, the Bulldog Heavy Revolver, is honestly kind of weak in comparison to something like the Thunderhead Heavy Autocannon. Heavy Autocannon absolutely annihilates stuff. But it targets the highest health enemy, and then it unloads its entire magazine in that direction. It is not a multi-directional weapon, so you do still have to be careful, move yourself around in position. Gunner's all about positioning. He's kind of a tank class. Scout's more balanced. Driller, really, really fun, and once you unlock him, one of the more beginner-friendly classes in my opinion, because his specialty is he drills through rock even faster. You can be a foreman for additional mining speed bonuses. You could be an interrogator. This is by far the weakest in my opinion. The status effect damage is focused on damage over time, but with a minus 30% damage, I don't really recommend interrogator unless you really know what you're doing. And strong-armed. Bad news about the impact axe. It has knockback. It can unfortunately knock enemies into you. Good news about impact axe, it has knockback. If you position well, it can knock enemies away from you. Strong arm, all about throwing stuff. Grenades, axes, you name it. Then you have the engineer. My favorite is the maintenance worker, because you get turrets, you get droids, you get all sorts of contract stuff, and they are great. Especially because you can give them tank treads, and they can follow you around via the overclock system. More on that in just a second, though. So choosing your dwarf determines how you play, which guns you have access to, all that fun stuff. For example, the Recon Scout gives access to light weapons. So if you want to go light and fast, that's what you do. That also makes him the weakest, because honestly, a lot of the medium weapons that the other 2 Scouts have access to are just stronger. So when you first load in, you'll see some bugs. You'll be tempted to kill them. Don't actually do that. You're a dwarf. Your goal is to mine. So you want to start mining the minerals. Be careful of the bugs. They can absolutely creep up on you, and as you can see, if they touch you, they will damage you. Though, it's not going to be instantly fatal. It is very rare for a bug to kill you instantly. But your health is a resource and healing is limited. As you mine, you'll get weapon upgrades. You'll also get resources that you can use to buy more upgrades at a shop in between rounds. That's why I always recommend prioritizing mining. Now there's also this fun blue orb. It's not gold or nitro. It's called Morkite. This is one of the secondary objectives within a zone. These spawn after a very quick unlock, so it won't be in your first couple runs, but it will definitely be a big part of your progress. Completing it gives you a big old burst of 30 gold. At levels 5, 15, and 25, you get to pick a second weapon. In this case, I'm going to grab the Cryo Grenade. And that happens to freeze enemies. Cold damage is very, very OP, and I can absolutely recommend it. Here you can see my deep core. It's doing work. It's targeting stuff. Up at the top, you have the timer. Your goal here should be to get to the drop pod, mine as much as possible, and also complete the secondary objective. And if you find some loot bugs, I'd say you shouldn't kill them because they're adorable, and you should take them home and, keep them as a pet. They're full of precious minerals. Murder them. Murder them all. You'll also occasionally find these resources. These are meta progression resources. In general, it's kind of risky to mine them. They do still give EXP, but they're quite dangerous. So if anything, I would try to get them on lower difficulties, not as you're pushing and progressing. You can also see there's lots of different bugs. There's these little red ones, the big green ones, and the fun yellow ones. The yellow ones explode. They explode on you, and they explode on the bugs. Watch this. If I set a bunch of them off here, they're going to kill a whole bunch of these bugs. Something that has gotten me killed numerous times on higher difficulties is exploding yellow bugs. And something that has caused so much of my success on higher difficulties is exploding yellow bugs. They are very much a double-edged sword, but they're also quite awesome. Use them tactically, and remember, they are quite dangerous. You can also see sometimes a swarm of enemies will chase you. One of the things you can do to prevent them from surrounding you, assuming your weapons don't kill them, is dig through rock. This causes them to trail behind you. As you can see, I'm just digging, living my best dwarf life. And all of a sudden, nice little trail. Then there's a flying enemy who's an asshole. He completely ignores that. So I'm just going to dig this out. You have the drop pod. What I like to do with a drop pod, I use it to get an artifact, and I also drop it directly on the elite's head. Squish goes the bug. This kills any elite in the game. It will take a massive chunk off the Juggernaut, even on Hazard 5. So after that, you have to get to the drop pod. So first and foremost, remember, you're a dwarf. Your goal is mining, not shooting bugs. If you want to go shoot bugs, play Helldivers, because in this case, shooting bugs is just the inconvenient second-order effect of your main goal, mining all that sweet gold and nitra, so when you get to the shop, you can absolutely buy the shiniest guns to just show off, put them on your wall. All right, I'm kind of exaggerating here. You definitely want to do some shooting of the bugs, because they drop EXP. But mining does also get you EXP, so it's not a waste of your time. The secondary objective gets you a lot of gold, also a nice chunk of EXP. And the extra meta progression resources shouldn't be your priority. You should think of them as nice to haves, but you'll definitely want them eventually because the higher difficulties are very punishing without meta progression. Oh, and then there's red sugar, which heals you. That's the reddish ore that you'll sometimes see around. Keep in mind that red sugar only heals you if you've taken damage, and you recover health as you level up. So in the early few levels, it's not nearly as important, especially since you're quite durable and have health regen. In later levels, it becomes a much bigger deal. The next thing to remember is understanding weapon targeting. Some weapons target high health enemies, others target directly in front of you, and some target a little bit more randomly, such as the nearest enemy. After you unlock a weapon for the first time, you'll absolutely need to get it to level 12 so that you can unlock the overclocks, because overclocks are when a weapon kind of turns on and you get all sorts of really fun special effects. This can very much be make or break for certain guns. You get to do fun things like change the damage types. By the way, Plasma is super OP because it bounces off terrain, and Cold is OP because it freezes enemies. So in this example, the Subita always fires behind me. This one's nice and easy. The throwing axes target the nearest enemy and knock it back, making it good when things get too close, or very bad when things get too close because it knocks enemies into me. And last up, the Wave Cooker deals with everything in a cone and rotates slowly. Overall, these are all AoE weapons, so it's not really a realistic setup, but I wanted to demonstrate with things that were very visual. And after you unlock a few weapons, don't be afraid to spend gold rerolling your options to get better guns, as those will absolutely make a difference in your build. So as you collect EXP, you get access to upgrades. Some upgrades, such as health, movement speed, pickup radius, those are upgrades for your character. Some, like projectile damage or kinetic damage, are global across multiple weapons. But then there's weapon-specific upgrades, and in most cases, because of how powerful overclocks are, you want to take these unless the alternatives is just really good, like mining speed. By default, a weapon upgrade increases the gun's level by 1. It can either be damage, fire rate, or reload speed. And generally speaking, it doesn't matter too much between those 3. But you'll want to try to balance them, and in general I find fire rates often a little less useful than the other 2. Occasionally though, you'll get paint job, which is +2, and there's a rare version that's +3. These are great because they help you reach the level 6, 12, and 18 threshold for overclocks, and the more guns that you get to 18, the more power you have available. In fact, some of these overclocks are so strong, they transform trash that you can barely use into dwarven treasure. A lot of a minute-to-minute gameplay here is dealing with the bugs that are coming at you from every angle, and it's easy to get overwhelmed, but there's a couple things to remember. First is, you know when a swarm's coming, you can see the timer at the top, so watch your positioning accordingly. Being near the edge of a map can be a danger. Also remember though, if there's a mineable wall next to you, then you're not trapped, you just need to go through. Very often you'll mine slower than you walk, so account for that and don't get hit by too many bugs. Other times, it can be better to use a yellow bug, detonate it, and escape through the hole it creates. Leveling up knocks things back, some weapons have a knockback. These are all great ways to escape. Or if you're tunneling through a wall, you can cause enemies to trail behind you, creating a nice, perfect little kill box. Just beware, flying bugs completely ignore walls, and green bugs can destroy them. Now, the drop pod is not only access to a powerful artifact that you'll take to the next part of your run, but it's also a deadly weapon, and you should drop it on the biggest bug you can find. This is a great way to take out elites, and it can be used to deal massive damage to the Juggernaut as well. My first Hazard 5 win was actually from doing this exact thing. I saved my drop pod, and I dropped it right on that Juggernaut's head, and man was that satisfying to watch its health go down. I'd been getting there time and time again, I'd been coming closer and closer, and every time I just make one mistake at the last minute. So being able to drop it, chunk its health, deal with the rest of the bugs before too many things trickled in, before I had to move too much, it was the perfect strategy for the time. And last but not least, get greedy. Loop those bugs around. Be sure to collect some EXP. Run through that hole you just created. And mine those resources. The bugs are getting close. Yes, they're getting stronger. They're hungry. They want to tear you apart. But it's fine. You've got this. You need that nitro for your next upgrade. But don't get too greedy. Because at the end of the day, you only have 30 seconds to hit that drop pod, and you only have so much health. Getting greedy is the most rewarding way to play Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. The game really pushes you for that greedy playstyle. But occasionally, it will punish you for it. So you need to learn your limits. And this is something that's very dependent on what upgrades you have, what guns you have. For example, can you freeze the enemies as they're coming in? Can you create a perfect kill box with plasma? Or do you have that stupid flying elite that's going to ignore all the walls you're tunneling through? At the end of the day, you'll just have to learn over a few painful lessons. And don't be afraid to grind on easier difficulties, especially if you're getting a gun to level 12 to unlock an overclock, or you need a little bit of extra meta progression. Dropping down to a hazard level where you're comfortable and can consistently go through all the waves is better than struggling at the highest difficulty you can find. Alright, now just for fun, I'm going to talk about my 5 favorite weapons in Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. First up, the cryo grenade. Why? It instantly freezes anything it hits. Do I need to say more? Let me. It also splits into 3 smaller grenades and at level 18 pulls everything in. Cryo grenade is awesome, cold damage in general is great CC, and it will absolutely carry you to victory. Second favorite is the Krakatoa Sentinel. This thing spews jets of fire and absolutely destroys stuff and terrain. You can have them mine nearby walls and they will obliterate all the scenery instantaneously. If you're a lazy dwarf who doesn't like mining, grab yourself a Krakatoa or 2. Then we have the M1000 Classic. Big old sniper, does massive damage and takes chunks off of everything. It can one-shot elites and even absolutely decimate the Juggernaut. I love this because at the end of the day, it's a big old gun with big old numbers. And if you stack some crit, oh boy does it hit just right. Then there's the Voltaxic Shock Fence, an absolute must-have in any lazy dwarf's arsenal. Do you really have to pick up all those EXP globes and all those materials? No, you don't, because the Voltaxic Shock Fence can pick it up for you. It can also slow enemies, and by slow, I mean freeze. Yeah, this is very, very good. Unfortunately, it is kind of reliant on getting those specific overclocks. Doesn't always do the most damage, doesn't need to. If you get them, it's an awesome utility. And last up, the Warthog. The shotgun that kinda sucks, but is actually super awesome once you get it to level 18, and it fires in both directions. Oh, and also make it plasma so it bounces off of walls. Yeah, firing in one direction, not that great when it's forward. Firing in both directions and bouncing off walls to double up and shotgun things even harder, yeah, this thing is awesome. Kinda wish the jury-rigged boomstick was half as cool. So those are just my 5 favorite weapons. I thought I'd add this fun little bit at the end. I might actually make a full weapon tier list where I go over things in more detail. I might not. We'll see how things go. And so with that said, I'm curious, Dwarf. Do you feel like you're ready to take on danger and darkness? To mine all those rocks and bring the bag home at the end of the day? Don't worry, there's a beer on the house if you manage to get back. If you get back. And if you want to get back to watching more content, if I do make those tier lists, I'll try to remember to link them up in the card and down below, and I'll also put a review of the game in case you got here before actually deciding if you want to buy it or not. Now, before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you don't make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is also down below, and you might even see your name on screen like these fine folks here. Also, a big thanks to everyone who watched till the end. Hope you learned something. If you did, be sure to share it with a friend. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.